Coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now, which is presented by PrizePicks, could Zach Ertz return to Philadelphia? Also, Howie, Roseman, and Nick Sirianni just held their pre-draft press conference. I'm going to react to that as well. The show starts right now. Welcome into Philadelphia Eagles Now, everybody. My name is Chase Sr., and as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, I appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. And a big story in Eagle land today. Could Eagles legend Zach Ertz return to Philadelphia in NFL free agency? Ertz said over the weekend, as he invited the Philadelphia Inquirer last week to follow him as he goes through this rehab process and he begins his preparations for the 2026 campaign in Arizona, that he doesn't want that ACL injury, which was gruesome last year that he suffered on the road against the Minnesota Vikings, to be the final play of what has been a borderline Hall of Fame career. And if you don't believe me that Ertz could be Canton bound, we'll talk more about that coming up here in just a moment. Here's what Ertz said to the Inquirer. I don't want it to be the last play that I have. Even talking to people now, and they do it out of the goodness of their heart. They say, man, that injury was tough. When people think of my career and that last play, I don't want that to be the conversation starter. And so for me, it's just doing everything I can to get back to my best, because I felt like I was playing really good football before I got hurt. And I agree with what Ertz said there, especially with what he did in 2024 with Washington when they made it to the NFC Championship game. You can make the argument he was the most consistent go-to target for rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels 2 seasons ago. And Ertz also made it be known when he was asked, of course, great reporting by the Philadelphia Inquirer, a good job of prying, that he is open to returning to the Eagles in free agency to round out his career after he was a second-round pick many years ago out of Stanford, and he ended up arguably being the best tight end in Eagles franchise history. Going back to that conversation of Ertz potentially being Canton bound, he has some of the best stats of any tight end in the history of the National Football League. Look it up yourself. And over the course of Eagles history, look at what he's been able to accomplish. So first, the most receptions in franchise history. Harold Carmichael, 589. Zach Ertz at 579. If he were to return to the Eagles and catch 11 passes, that'd be easy to do throughout the course of the 2026 campaign potentially. I know that they have Dallas Scudder and they've made other moves at the tight end spot in free agency, but if he catches 11 balls, he becomes the all-time franchise leader in passes caught. He's already ahead of the great Pete Retzlaff, the legendary Brian Westbrook, and current Eagle Dallas Scudder, who's sitting there at 409, and what a career he's been able to put together, and what a luxury we've had as Eagles fans, seeing the likes of Brent Selleck go into Zach Ertz to Dallas Scudder over the last several years. So there's that, and then most receiving yards in Eagles history. Harold Carmichael, Hall of Famer, just a tick under 9,000. Pete Retzlaff at 7,400 plus. Deshaun Jackson, one of the most electrifying players of all time, at 6,500. Mike Quick, just under 6,500. And then Zach Ertz is right there at 6,267. Ertz added that breaking that record for the most catches in franchise history is not lost on him. That is something that he as an individual would like to accomplish in his career. Of course, this conversation also pivots to this. Do the Eagles even need him on this roster? As a tight end depth piece, I don't think it would be the worst move in the world to bring back Zach Ertz, especially when you think of this offense that the Eagles are introducing. Some of these coaches who run this scheme, they like having two tight ends on the field. Shoot, Sean McVay last year made it be known that he really enjoyed pivoting to three tight ends on the field at all times. And so this Eagles tight end depth chart is in a spot where Goddard is clearly tight end one, and that is not going to change. But Greg Calcaterra got like $700,000 in guaranteed money this offseason. He's not a lock to make the team. Johnny Munt is a great blocker. I think that he should make the team, but he only got $750,000. guaranteed in free agency. Outside of that, Stone Smart was an intriguing addition in NFL free agency. They are cross-training Camelatu to play fullback. I think he's better there. There could be a spot for Ertz on this team. You look ahead, though, to 2 Thursdays. 2026 NFL Draft is coming up. I know that I've been one of the leaders here in this Eagles content-creating community, in this broadcasting space, and saying I would love for the Eagles to draft a young developmental tight end. And if the board were to fall the way that the Eagles probably hope and perhaps anticipate, and they could draft a great tight end, round 2, Eli Stowers. Round 3 or 4, Sam Roush, Oscar Delp, Max Clare, players like that, then I think it'd be wiser for the Eagles to go youth movement over Ertz. But if those players get swooped up, like we kind of saw a run on tight ends earlier than anticipated last year, and it doesn't make sense for the Eagles from a best player available standpoint, they could pivot. They could bring back Ertz on a cost-controlled deal. Ertz had mentioned, as we talked about earlier, he thought he was playing really good ball. I think at the time when he got hurt against Minnesota, the Commanders had lost like 6 or 7 games in a row. Ertz has always had the propensity to drop some passes from time to time, but he was having a very good season despite Jaden Daniels being hurt and that offense being terrible, or as Charles Barkley would say, man, that offense was terrible. 50 catches for 504 last year, 4 touchdowns, 7 drops. But it was really that 2024 campaign where Ertz had a new life to him, and he breathed new life into his football career after a couple of injury-plagued seasons with Arizona, when that also included a knee injury. But 2 seasons ago, 66 catches, 654 yards, 7 touchdowns for that Washington team that made it into the Final Four. So with that, let's pop up today's poll question. What say you? Should the Eagles bring back Zach Ertz? Share your thoughts with me. Type S for sign or P for pass. Coming up next here on the show, I'm going to react to what Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni said today from the Jefferson Health Performance Center. No longer the NovaCare Complex. That's coming up here in a moment. But first, we are so pumped up to announce that HMA and PrizePicks are making today's Philadelphia Eagles now possible. Use our code HMA and get $50 in lineups instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks is America's #1 sports picks app. The app is really easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. The playoffs are here for basketball, baseball is underway, and it's time to cash in with PrizePicks. Also, with the new social feeds feature, you can share PrizePicks with your friends and copy lineups with a single click instantly. That includes me, producer Chip. You can give us a follow. For myself, it's @Chase_Senior. That is my username, and you can see all of my lineups before they even get posted here on the show. Here's our lineup for tonight. Some basketball playoffs action. Bam Adebayo, more than 10.5 rebounds. LaMelo Ball, more than 23.5 points. Devin Booker, late night hoops action, more than 6 assists. New user offer. Download the PrizePicks app today with our link in the comments and the description and use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, want to react to what Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni said during their pre-draft presser. And for other general managers across the NFL, for aspiring general managers, if you're a young cat watching this show, a young bull, somebody who is seasoned, and you want to become a GM, you're an aspiring general manager at the NFL level, you should watch how Howie Roseman conducted this presser today. A masterclass talking about team strategy, how to plan for the draft, how to execute in the draft, avoiding questions like what's going to happen with A.J. Brown in 2026. He is so savvy, and that Eagles PR department has really done a great job of coaching him up. So I'm just going to go in order of the questions that Howie was asked today. What is left for the Eagles to do before the draft? The Eagles yesterday had strategy meetings. They have a medical meeting yesterday. They're also in the lead up to the draft, taking a deeper look at some of these day 3 prospects. They're going to get insight from some of these college coaches, which could sway them one way or another on whether or not they decide to pick a player in day 3, and Howie loves a collaborative approach. The Eagles are also going to continue to look at the NFL free agent list. There's some really talented players who are still available. Wide receivers like Deebo Samuel, Jawan Jennings, defensive ends like Jadeveon Clowney. And Howie, he's going to ask his front office, are there free agents who are available right now that are more intriguing than some of these draft options? That'll probably be more of a pertinent question following the draft to see how the draft board falls. How does acquiring Dontavian Wicks impact A.J. Brown's future? Howie was asked about this directly by Elliott Shore-Parks. He danced around the question, didn't answer it. He did talk about the player, though, that Wicks is physical, that he's an explosive player at the top of routes, the familiarity with him playing in Green Bay, and combining forces once again with new offensive coordinator Sean Mannion, who's been a coach under Matt LaFleur the last couple of years. Those were driving factors in the Eagles acquiring Dontavian Wicks. Nick Sirianni really likes his toughness and the ability to separate at the top of the route. You know, he's a 4'5", 4'6" guy, but he's a savvy route runner who uses his body really well. He's a first down machine, and he plays a little bit faster than what the 40-yard dash shows. And the strategy for acquiring Wicks was as such. Howie said, when you look at the wide receiver room that we have now, compared to the wide receiver rooms that we've had in years prior, he also scouted other teams across the NFL. And he said, we've been fortunate that we haven't had to tap into some of our wide receiver depth because we've been able to stay healthy at the wide receiver position. But the Eagles wide receiver depth has not been great. And so he studied teams around the NFL, and he made it a point this offseason to get deeper at wide receiver. Again, Sirianni mentioning that Wicks' toughness really shows up on tape. And Howie mentioned that another thing with Wicks is that his quarterbacks have always had a lot of trust in him, which is why, I talked about this during that breaking news video, a high percentage of his catches, his first 3 years in the NFL, have moved the chains and they've gone for first downs. And this also is a peek into the Eagles' process here. They've been interested in Wicks for a couple of weeks now. Howie shared a story that Nick and him were flying to Arizona for the NFL League meetings. Howie was watching some Wicks tape. He got so excited over a particular play that he had to step over somebody else to show Nick a play of Wicks making a play. Pretty awesome. Are the Eagles comfortable at the safety spot right now? I'd probably say that's one of the biggest weaknesses and question marks on this Eagles roster currently. And Howie said that it has to fit the value of where the Eagles are drafting and how they view that player if they are going to take a safety. And he said at safety, we'll add to that position like we'll add to some other positions. With Sean Mannion coming aboard and the Eagles changing their offensive scheme, Nick Sirianni was a big reason why the Eagles are pivoting systems and schemes here. Will the Eagles change their offensive line evaluations? Because in this offense, whether it's under Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, others, the prototype for offensive linemen is a little bit different. The Eagles have, thanks to Jeff Stoutland, he had a big say in the draft room and in free agency at that offensive line spot. They prioritize players who are a lot bigger and more physical. But this system sometimes requires offensive linemen who are a little bit more agile, nimble, and athletic. Howie said, we have a good system in place, and we're going to combine all these things. How we scout offensive linemen in the past with this new system, and that's how we'll look at offensive linemen. Howie was asked again, with the additions at wide receiver, how does it impact A.J. Brown? Marquise Hollywood Brown signed. Elijah Moore signed. Dontavian Wicks traded for. Howie joked, and he got the whole room laughing. He said, what are the odds that you think I answer that question? 50%? Everybody starts laughing, and all he said was, A.J. Brown is an Eagle. The same line that he used a couple of weeks ago at the NFL League meetings. Will the Eagles matriculate up the draft board, and will they trade up? Howie said, if there's an opportunity to move up, will move up, but obviously the value has to make sense. In finding a Lane Johnson replacement, a lot of people believe that the Eagles are going to go offensive line early in this draft. Howie mentioned something interesting. And he does a great job, of course, of planning ahead, not being too late to address problems. And he said, with Jason Kelce, we had an idea that he was going to retire at some point. A benefit to drafting Cam Jurgens while Jason Kelce was still playing was that Jurgens got to see how Kelce works, how Kelce plays, how Kelce practices, how he prepares. And that was a great learning experience for Jurgens. And so if an offensive tackle is drafted by the Eagles and they can benefit to seeing how Lane Johnson goes about his work, then the Eagles could go that route. Are the Eagles going to give Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith contract extensions? They are both extension eligible. Howie said, and this is kind of his process, we'll keep those conversations in-house until we make a decision. This is another interesting one. How does NIL at the college level change things in the draft? Howie said, really the only difference is we are now drafting guys who are taking pay cuts from what they were earning at the college level. Kind of crazy to think about, but it's true. And so the passion that these prospects have for football becomes even more vital in the pre-draft process. Howie was also asked about the Jalen Hurts reports, and he said, we talk to our players directly about their strengths, about their weaknesses, and he said it's kind of unfair to see that these articles are written, but he understands why these articles are written because these writers, that's how they make some money. All right, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Another loaded show in the books here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Shout out to PrizePicks. Shout out to HMA. We'll catch you soon. Go Birds.